Sudan.
We have to go back to the beginning and say, what is the cause of our problem? And remember, we've talked extensively in many of the other videos about the big hormone talk. We've talked about woman's metabolism and how the big hormones can damage your metabolism, and then when that starts to unravel, you can have problems with those feel-good chemicals in your brain. Now, what I've just described to you is physical, mental, and emotional symptoms that can result from one big main cause, and that is from spiking and overstimulating your big hormones. If you work backwards from there, and you say to yourself, all right, if you're a product formulator, what you want to do is you want to be able to solve your main problem. Because if you solve that, then the downstream consequences resolve themselves. We're making that woman much healthier by utilizing these natural catalysts in such a way to where inside of those formulas, let's take AM and PM as an example. We call it active AM and restore PM. Why AM and PM, first off? And the reason is, number one, what are we trying to do? We're trying to help your hormonal system, your metabolism, and your brain chemistry, okay? And there is different rhythms that the body goes through at different times of the day. When you wake up in the morning, you're in what we call a catabolic metabolism. That's the utilizing aspect of your metabolism because you're awake, right? You're functional. So the AM formula would have a different configuration because we're dealing with a different type of metabolism during that time. Of course, when you go to bed, that's the restore PM, and some of the nutrients that would be in the restore PM, of course, would be different because that's what they call the anabolic side of your metabolism, the resting, rejuvenating, revitalizing, rebuilding side of this metabolic phase. So right then and there, we have to be able to differentiate between the two because you need different nutrients at different times. Nobody is doing that. Nobody does that. The other thing is, now how are we going to balance out these big major hormones? Because remember, we've talked about this before. How do you create a drug or do surgery or create some kind of medical diagnostic technique for hormones that are elevated? When you have too much of a hormone, the only thing that you can do is calm that down and correct the problem, right? So the AM and PM are designed throughout the course of, in the morning obviously you take the AM. In the evening when you take the PM, you're getting coverage all day long where you are helping to balance and keep insulin, adrenaline, and cortisol in check. And also within the two formulas, there are compounds that help with your feel-good chemicals in your brain. So if you can simultaneously, you do all three of those things the right way, for the right reasons, in the right order, that's how you can use natural compounds, natural catalysts, in order to really speed along that process and accelerate the healing and get women feeling really good again. Now, let's talk about what's inside of it. We had to develop a way in which to combine, because natural compounds work best in unison in combination with other natural compounds, especially if you're going specifically to solve something. So let's go to the insulin side of it first. A therapeutic stack. That means multiple nutrients stacked on top of one another to be able to deal with that insulin thing as effectively as we can, because you have to deal with insulin resistance. You have to deal with glucose, too much glucose or sugar in the bloodstream. You have to deal with the communication between insulin and the brain, right? There's a lot going on. So there are different nutrients that can actually handle that issue with insulin from multiple different angles. That's the secret, and that's what people don't understand and don't do in supplements, because they don't want to go through the expense or the trouble figuring it out and buying the quality raw materials in order to which to do it. So we have what we call a therapeutic stack. That's one example. So there are 3 compounds in there. One of them is something called Gymnema sylvestri. I don't expect people to know or understand these things, obviously, but just knowing these names might, help you, because you might have heard of it or seen it somewhere else before. The other one is called banaba leaf. It's a very, very potent compound that helps with the regulation of blood sugar levels. And then probably even more potent, and one that actually mimics insulin. Imagine this, it mimics the function of insulin, that you can find that in cinnamon extract. The cinnamon, like the cinnamon stick, inside there are compounds, molecules that really help, and they mimic the effects of insulin. Okay, so that's one therapeutic stack that handles insulin. Now we go down to adrenaline and cortisol. These are your stress hormones. When people are stressed, these are the hormones that surge through your system and make you feel stressed out. When you say to someone, "God, I'm so stressed right now," that's because these hormones have depleted your system and you're feeling the effects of that depletion. So how do we rebuild and get your body start functioning better related to those hormones? There are compounds that we've known, probably some of the oldest and most studied compounds on earth when it comes to natural remedies. They're called adaptogens. And an adaptogen is something that helps your body adapt to stress. But the way that it works, which is interesting, is it helps to prevent your body from overreacting to the stress response, so you don't put too much hormone in your system. Imagine how fantastic that is. Instead of telling someone, "Look, calm down and stop being so stressed." That's easy to say, but how are you going to get people to do that? But what if you gave them something that calmed them down and kept them from being stressed? How great would that be? So inside of that, there's another therapeutic stack. One of them, and these are for women, more for women. One of them is called holy basil extract. Proven adaptogen for that very purpose. Another one is called shatavari extract. That's in the Ayurvedic or Indian the system of medicine. They use shatavari for women who are stressed. And the other is the compound that I talked about a lot in one of the other videos called rhodiola rosea. What all those compounds do is help decrease the stress response and improve the communication between your hormones and your brain. Fantastic. And then, like I said, we have compounds like something called Bacopa maniari. This is another Ayurvedic medicine that helps with the feel-good chemicals in your brain. Another one called trimethylglycine. Again, I don't expect people to understand this, but these are the compounds that are in there that helps with the brain. But then when you go over, that's the AM formula. If you go to the PM formula, because it's the brain where you have to separate the AM from the PM. Okay, so we have in the brain formulations for the Restore PM side of it, you have interesting compounds. One of them is called myricetin. Hardly anyone knows about this. It's incredible for helping to get the serotonin back in your brain. There's another one called idebenone. Idebenone is one of the only compounds they've ever found that can do something called stimulate nerve growth factor, meaning inside your brain you have all these neurons that are needing to grow and thrive and to help you to create neurological pathways so that you can think and be creative. Well, you got to have something to stimulate that, and idebenone is one of those compounds. So these are extremely advanced. A lot of these nutrients most people don't use or have never heard of. Just know AM and PM, take this in the morning, take this in the evening, done. You have covered so much ground by just doing that. But we have one more thing to talk about, and that is there's another compound that in order to complete AM and PM, we have to add this especially for women, and that's called the Life Factor Essentials. Now what that's all about is there are signaling molecules, just that's the best way to describe it. They're like hormones that work really fast. And the name of them, what they're called, is eicosanoids. Nobody has to learn this or understand that, but an eicosanoid is a signaling molecule that, man, right at the very essence of where cells function and stuff, these signaling molecules are working, they're communicating, and they're so important to your moment-to-moment metabolic functions. But they're also, the way you get these signaling molecules is through certain kinds of essential fatty acids that are found in things like, you've heard of fish oil, right? Well, eicosanoids, and this is where these eicosanoids come from, these signaling molecules, from flaxseed oil. Heard of that before? And there's another type of molecule that comes from plant sources called that you can get it either from evening primrose oil or borage seed oil or black currant seed oil. They're special molecules. Women are literally, their bodies are almost, they're so deficient in these compounds that when you give them, those in and of themselves, sometimes I've seen almost miraculous things occur. But when you do what you're supposed to do with the AM and the PM, the active AM restore PM, and you add the ability to make sure that metabolism is now functional with these signaling molecules that I'm talking about, these eicosanoids, man, the results just skyrocket by having that combination together. But you can't leave these out, these essential fatty acids, because the reason they're called essential is because without them, you'd suffer from this thing called death, and nobody wants to do that, right? But when you don't have them and you're deficient, you suffer from sort of this lack of life, right? Women's hair loses its luster, their eyes loses its sheen, their skin loses its its beauty. And so these molecules are so critical and so important for so many different functions in the body. I can't even begin to list it. My jaw will get carpal tunnel trying to talk, about so many, about the number of it. So the point is, the combination of the three is the core formulas. I recommend that for every woman. I don't care if you're healthy or if you're suffering from premenopause, menopause, stubborn weight gain, fatigue, any age up to a teenager and beyond. It's the most powerful and most potent way to get the anti-aging and longevity components that people are looking for, because everybody thinks anti-aging and longevity is all about antioxidants, and that has very little to do with it. Anti-aging and longevity is about getting your big metabolic hormones to start functioning the way they're supposed to function, because that's what determines how fast you age and how well your body functions. So that's what these compounds are designed to do. So the whole package together, those three, if you want to get yourself into a place where you can start burning fat, you can start overcoming fatigue, and you can start dealing with those 35 plus symptoms of premenopause and menopause and PMS, that's the way to do it. And as far as I know, it's the only way in the world that's able to cover it the way that we cover it and give you these essential compounds and essential nutrients that a woman needs to build herself back up and get rid of these symptoms.